For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler says President Trump's assertion of executive privilege over special counsel Robert Mueller's report is a clear escalation of his administration's blanket defiance of Congress. Nadler spoke ahead of a committee vote to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for not turning over a full, unredacted version of the Mueller report.
If Congress is not entitled to the full, unredacted Mueller report, one must wonder what document we would be entitled to. Our exhaustive negotiations with the Department of Justice have unfortunately left us back where we began, with unprecedented obstruction by an administration that has now announced its intention to block all attempts at congressional oversight of the executive branch. It is our constitutional duty to respond.
Okay, but can the Attorney General and/or Trump administration be forced to meet the demands of the House Judiciary Committee to give the unredacted report? AFA counsel Abraham Hamilton III says,
no, in order for William Barr to provide Congress an unredacted copy of the Mueller report, he would have to violate law passed by Congress to do so. Remember, following the impeachment of Bill Clinton, Congress made the decision that we don't want Congress to get entire special counsel reports in the future, so they passed a law called the Special Counsel Statute that prohibits a releasing of an unredacted special counsel investigation to Congress. So literally they're attempting to hold William Barr in contempt for complying with the law that Congress passed.
More on this story at onenewsnow.com. Homegrown may take on a new meaning with a new tariff announcement by the Commerce Department. Teresa Crowley has all the dirt.
Homegrown may be the best bet, with the Commerce Department announcing a big-ticket tariff on fresh tomatoes from Mexico, a 17.5% tariff on vine-ripened and other fresh tomatoes. According to Arizona State University economists, that could translate into a 40% price hike from May to December, and 85% in the winter when there are fewer domestic producers. The prices of canned tomatoes wouldn't be affected as much. A quarter of tomatoes consumed in the U.S. are eaten raw, and the U.S. is still the biggest producer in the world. Therese Crowley, Fox News.
Well, they bought a box of Legos for a kid and got 40 grand in drugs instead. Lillian Wu has that story.
3 women visiting a consignment shop in South Carolina picked up a box of Legos, drove home to Georgia, and gifted it to a child who opened it to find over 3 pounds of methamphetamine inside, according to the Statesboro Herald. The $40,000 worth of meth handed over to the Bullock County Sheriff's Department, who called in DEA agents. Authorities believe the drugs were likely mailed to the wrong address, explaining dealers often send to abandoned addresses, but the Postal Service often won't leave those packages. They're eventually auctioned off when unclaimed. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
Finding an Uber or Lyft ride today may be a bit more difficult as drivers hop out of their cars and take to the streets to protest around the country. Gernal Scott tells us why.
From New York to Atlanta to D.C. and L.A., drivers with the ride-sharing companies are speaking out against what they say are declining hourly wages. Bayravi Desai leads the New York Taxi Workers Alliance. She says their drivers are looking for, among other demands,
80 to 85% of the fare. No more upfront pricing where drivers are cut out of the fare revenue.
Protests are ranging from a few hours to all-day walkouts. Uber and Lyft issued statements saying they are constantly improving the work environment for drivers. Uber plans to have its initial public stock offering tomorrow. In New York, Gernal Scott, Fox News.
In final news this hour, a gallon of regular gasoline will set you back on average $2.88 today. Drivers were paying $2.82 a gallon on this day last year. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
I would go to work drunk, and then it came to where I lost my housing. Being here at Teen Challenge taught me that I needed to have a relationship with God. I've done so much changing, and I am just so blessed.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adult to Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible,
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
what magic wand do you have?
A really strong job report to start the year, finishing really after a very strong year last year, 2.6 million jobs created last year, and here, the first month of this year, 304,000 net new jobs. That's more than economists had expected.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey, welcome to the program. Stacy on the Right. I'm here. I made it again. I say that because aside from having my own personal summer, shout out to the friend online who coined that phrase for me, I am absolutely swimming in activities for our graduating senior. Yes, I'm that mom again, 2 years in a row with a senior in high school graduating. And I'm just a little in shock. I'm starting to feel shell-shocked at not just the level of activities and the things that we have to get done, but the realization that this boy, well, he's not a boy anymore. I've been calling him a young man for some time now. Still a young man, I think, but he is now just here shortly going to be out of high school, no longer a student. He's going to be more like, well, he's going to be a college student and a young adult. And so it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. Welcome to the program today. We have so much to cover. We're going to have Ethan Blevins. He's an attorney for the Pacific Legal Foundation. He actually is kind of fantastic. He's going to come on and talk about Gillibrand and her plans to boost her campaign through the use of democracy dollars. Now, there's some interesting history behind this. And as always here on the program, we like to inform you, like to make sure that you know exactly what's going on. And so we have that. We also have, the president has blocked the unredacted Mueller report from being released, as Attorney General Barr said he would if they found him in contempt of Congress. Their attempt to produce this unredacted report, which is something that if they really wanted it done, they control the House. They could just pass that in the House and then send it over to the Senate and get, there's plenty of people over there who want everything to come out and just make it the law. If they made it the law, though, it wouldn't be Attorney General Barr's fault. And they need to demonize him because they need to connect him to Donald Trump and continue to rail and cry about things that they can't have instead of simply using the power that they have to get what they want, which would then prove that really there's no there. So this is a way of kind of creating a pseudo boogeyman that they can shoot down. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the democracy dollars. We'll be talking about Pelosi saying we cannot accept a second term for Donald Trump. This is interesting because the Democrats are now starting to really just unmask themselves and come out with it. It's raw, naked power seeking that we're observing here. Nothing to do with wrongdoing by the president. They just hate him and they don't want him to be president for the second term. Not like we don't understand that. We didn't. Now, I never hated Barack Obama, but I definitely didn't want him to have a second term. And my goal was for him not to, but he did. And so we lived through that. It was something that happened. It happened. And, hey, here we are. That's going to have to be the attitude the Democrats take. I don't think we're going to see that. But right now, they're losing their minds. So right now, I want to get to Psalm 90. That's our encouragement for today. So a friend of mine actually shared this with me. And she sent it over by note with a salad and some dessert. I mean, get you some friends who'll drop a salad off at your house and include Bible verses in there. I mean, I was just flabbergasted. I was like, this is awesome. In a cooler, no less. So this Psalm 90, it is so encouraging. And I'm sorry, I said Psalm 90. What I'm looking for is Psalm 91, not Psalm 90. And so Psalm 91, when we're talking about encouragement, and we do that here on the show a lot. And the reason we do encouragement is because I know for myself, easily discouraged over here, right? I'm pretty upbeat. I'm pretty positive, but I can easily, let circumstances kind of really take the wind out of my sails. And so I find that when I focus my eyes on him and I put my efforts into reading his word, it changes things for me. It changes the atmosphere. And just at this end portion of the year, and I'm kind of veering off here because I want to read Psalm 91, and we'll just 1 second here, but this time of year, at the end of the school year, usually it's just a lot of hustle and bustle. But because of some women's groups that I've been participating in this school year, it has been much more of a time of rejoicing and sharing answered prayer with other women, moms who, we get together and do certain activities for the kids for school or at the school. And I tell you what, I've been so uplifted by these godly women who are praying into action. They're not, complaining into action or just doing empty action. It's literal prayer that becomes kind of the driver for the action that we've been taking. And it has so encouraged me. And so when I saw this psalm inside of my little cooler with my salad in it today, and I was getting it out, I'm like, ooh, I get to have lunch. And then I looked and I'm like, oh my goodness, Psalm 91, this is one of my favorites. So here it is. And I want you to feel it, this is what God says to us. And we're going to unpack it a little bit, but it's perfect for today. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings will you trust. His truth will be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flies by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shall you behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear you up with their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread upon the lion and the adder is a snake, and the young lion and the dragon shall you trample under your feet, because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. That's what God says to us. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. So, 2 things you have to do. First, you have to say of the Lord, he's my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. So you confess this with your mouth. And then you dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Dwelling there is a place of obedience and a place of prayer. And then you do those 2 things, and all of the rest of Psalm 91 is your inheritance. It doesn't get much more encouraging than that. And I always say that at the end of every encouragement. I'm like, oh, it just doesn't get better than that. And then the next day I have one, and it's just as awesome, if not even better. So that's what we have to look forward to. So Psalm 91, I'm going to be meditating on this for the next few days, because it's awesome when I stumble on something, or I'm in my prayer closet trying to, searching the scriptures. That's one thing, but it's a totally another thing when God sends someone to your doorstep with lunch and a salad. She didn't even come in. She rang the doorbell, didn't know if I was home or not, left the cooler there, texted me and said, the cooler's on your doorstep, not sure if you're home. I was at home, so I was like, I wonder why she didn't ring the doorbell so I could have said hi. I brought it in, and inside was the scripture. So I'm so excited by this. It's just a blessing from God. And that's the encouragement for today. So now, pivoting over to the political sphere, we have this CNN contributor who says when a woman gets pregnant, she's not pregnant with a human being. Yes, I'm giggling because what kind of nonsense and tomfoolery exactly is she working with here? Let's listen to her, number 3.
A woman gets pregnant, that is not a human being inside of her. It's part of her body. And this is about a woman having full agency and control of her body and making decisions about her body and what is part of her body with medical professionals. Those are the facts, and that is the law of the land.
Listen.
So the baby is property, chattel. That is the Republican commentator who's on there, battling with Chris Cuomo and this one who shall remain nameless. And they're having it out over the heartbeat bill from Georgia. And I'm just hang with me here for a minute. Why do we have to go into lying? We've already seen the face of the new abortion-minded Democrats. They don't have to keep saying unscientific things to support their position when they've already told us they don't care if it's a baby. It could be a pot of gold in there. They're here for killing it, destroying it, utterly obliterating it. They don't care if it's painful, and they don't care if the woman has repercussions for decades afterwards. They're just all about getting those abortions done. Like Ilhan Omar loves to say, all about the Benjamins. They're all about the abortions. And so there is no scientific support for her statement that when women get pregnant, the thing that they're pregnant with is another part of their body. Last I checked, when they do ultrasounds, they don't see a human heart growing in the abdomen, in the womb. They don't see elbows or toes or, hair follicles growing in there. They see another human being. Now, that human being is dependent upon the mother for life support so that it can grow up to a certain point until its birth. But it's not her. And we have this running joke at our house that I actually started, and I get mocked roundly for it, but I'm sticking with it. And that is, I tell the kids whenever they're like, well, we just want to go so-and-so. And I'm like, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And they're like, why? I'm like, well, you're like a part of me that's broken loose and you're just running around doing whatever you want. But in my mind, we're still the same. Now, that is utter nonsense, I know. But it's my way to describe to the kids how deeply interested I am in their welfare. It feels like they're still a part of me. They're just running around loose, and I'm concerned. So I use that metaphor, unscientific as it may be, to describe why I don't know if that's the best choice for you to do, or, let's talk about why you want to do that type of thing. But even in the most, emotionally wrought circumstances where I'm trying to use that to describe why I don't want the kids to do something, it has never been, and nor will it ever be, a fact that human children are simply another organ of their mother. No, it's a whole nother human being with a soul and a spirit and a purpose, created in the image of God, that matters. And so, inconvenient? Absolutely. Takes up 10 months of your life? Yep. Something that you can snuff out if you want to? According to the Supreme Court, yes, but according to God's law, absolutely not. Unjustifiable, not something you're going to want to have to explain at the judgment seat. So, if we're talking about this thing and we're being honest, her statements, not only do they don't make sense, but they also speak to the level of depravity that is currently residing on the left when it comes to abortion, which is they'll make any argument they can. They'll say anything they can. They'll do anything they can. They'll dox anybody they can. They'll yell at any grandma they can. They'll scream down anyone they can. They'll yell, "Hail Satan." They'll sing it in a sing-songy voice. They'll shout their abortions. They'll do whatever they can do to make it palpable and try to coerce others, people of conscience, people of faith, into giving in and acquiescing to their desire to bow down to the god of Molech. And in every instance, it is incumbent upon us to stand firmly and say, no, it's not another organ of the mother. It is a human being all day, every day, from before we even knew what days were into the future. All right, when we get back, we'll have Ethan Blevins. He's an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's Medi-Share, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason Medi-Share is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining Medi-Share for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining Medi-Share and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. During one of our Thanksgiving holidays, I found myself lying on the floor playing with my grandchildren. What a time. As I looked at them laughing and smiling, I had a flashback. I remembered when our children were babies and how I sat on the floor playing with them. I often ask Karen, sweetheart, where has the time gone? It just seems like yesterday. Life is too quick and too short, isn't it? The tragedy is there are lives all around us being cut off, in our estimation, too soon. Uncertainty and the temporary nature of life stares us in the face, and yes, life should be a joyful journey, but with a good dose of sobriety. Psalm 39, verses 4 and 5 helps us with this perspective. Listen to what the psalmist says. Lord, make me to know my end, and what is the extent of my days. Let me know how transient I am. Behold, you have made my days as handbreadths, and my lifetime as nothing in your sight. Surely every man at his best is a mere breath. It's so important for us to live with the understanding that it is going to be over. When the psalmist says, Lord, make me to know my end, he's praying, I want to be conscious of the fact that this life is going to be over one day, so I need to live with a sense of purpose. This life is not permanent. I'm not going to be here forever. Compared to eternity, he says, my lifetime is just a handbreadth, not even the blink of the eye. Here's what I want you to remember today. If we live by eternal values, we redeem time for his eternal purposes. If not, then all we leave behind are fading memories.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey there, welcome back to the program. I'm Stacy Washington, and this is the Stacy on the Right show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. You can find out more at stacyontheright.com, afr.net, and urbanfamilytalk.com, where you can register for our Marriage and Family Life Conference, which is happening in June. You can still register. You can find out the agenda and all of the speakers who are going to be joining us by going to urbanfamilytalk.com. Check it out. All right, right now it's my pleasure to welcome Ethan Blevins. He's an attorney for the Pacific Legal Foundation. Ethan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, it's good to talk to you. I saw this and I was like, that's nonsense. And I just kept on scrolling. Like, I literally just kept scrolling past the story. But you have some interesting details about Gillibrand wanting to implement something called democracy dollars. Now, first off, before we even get into this conversation, what is it with Democrats calling our country a democracy when we're a representative republic?
Right. Yeah, our democracy is in danger, maybe because we've never actually had a democracy. I don't know. But yes, I think part of the reason to take the question maybe a little more seriously is that, fans of government power want to downplay limits on democratic power that exists in our Constitution and state constitutions. So I think there is some purpose to that rhetoric that's a little bit more sinister than you might otherwise think.
And you know what, Ethan, I'm just to piggyback on that, because I agree with you 100%. I think it also has to do with the two-party system that we have, where Democrats like to call our country a democracy because it's in their name. And then representative republic kind of makes it sound like we should be Republicans, because we live in a representative republic. So the natural, you know what I mean? Like it would naturally follow that you would be a Republican if you lived in a representative republic. And they don't like that.
A branding thing.
Yeah. I think it's even that as well. I mean, obviously they would prefer a democracy because that would give them mob rule and they'd never relinquish power ever again. I think it's both. It's so odd. So what is Gillibrand actually proposing here with her so-called democracy dollars?
Yeah, so this is a campaign finance program, not so different from things we've seen in the past, where she's proposing that we provide public funding to candidates to help them run for office in the theory that it's going to reduce the influence of really wealthy corporations or individuals. The big difference between what has been done in the past and this proposal is that essentially everybody in the country would receive a voucher that they could decide where that money goes. So it's kind of private individuals deciding where taxpayer dollars go, specifically to which political candidates those tax dollars go to.
So this is kind of like, hey, we don't like that Janus ruling with unions, and unions are dying on the vine. So why don't we just turn every American into kind of like a union member by doling out money to them that they have to give to political candidates? Like that?
That's a great comparison. Yeah, I mean, and that's the Janus case is really directly relevant here because, and Janus said, the Supreme Court in Janus said, you can't compel somebody to sponsor someone else's political speech, and that's exactly what these democracy dollars do. So you're right. I mean, it's like everybody in the country being forced to pay union dues or something like that.
Well, because they don't say where the money comes from. That's the part that, to me, and it may be just because of doing this for a living and talking to experts like you, but I just hear Thomas Sowell's voice ringing in my ears from one of his interviews with the Hoover Institution, where he said, your first question when anyone proposes a new policy, of any kind is, how much will it cost and who's going to pay for it? Well, obviously, giving everyone $600, I think it's $600 that she's proposing, means that you have to increase the taxes of some people by more than $600 because everyone doesn't have $600 to redistribute to everyone else.
Yes, and she's kind of leapt on the classic Democratic hobby horse here, which is removing corporate tax loopholes as the way to fund this. I mean, I think everybody would just rather have $600 to decide on their own how to spend it, and I have a feeling that none of them would spend it on a political campaign. Yeah. This is, as far as I can tell, a proposal that money will come from the general revenue, but that supposedly corporate tax loopholes are going to pay for it. I think there's a lot of better ways to spend tax revenue, but Gillibrand thinks that politicians need taxpayer money.
Okay, but I thought they said they wanted to get. Oh, okay, wait, because when the Democrats say they want to get dark money out of politics, they mean money that they can't pinpoint to a person and then freeze that person and, paint them as a target for their ire and their wrath. But when the money comes from the people, literally from the people, because this would literally be a tax increase that would then send money into the hands of Democratic voters, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting irony because for so many years Democrats have railed against Citizens United and other campaign finance cases with the claim that money is not speech. And now they seem to be turning that on its head and becoming obsessed with money as a form of speech. The fact of the matter is that we're not going to take this program's not going to take money out of politics. She's proposing that anybody who opts into her Democracy Dollar program will have to be subject to a $200 contribution limit per contributor. Whereas if you chose not to participate in the program, you'd have the $2,800 contribution limit for the primary and the $2,800 contribution limit for the general election, which is so much higher that it seems very unlikely that any candidate would agree to essentially manacle themselves and face that high contribution limit. So it's almost certainly not going to actually help them do what she says it's going to do.
Okay, so let's go through your fun facts. I love the fact that you sent these over. I was looking at them and kind of laughing, kind of. I mean, I would laugh at these things more often if they weren't so deadly serious actual proposals from Democrats. Your first fun fact is that the estimated cost of $600 per person or more for these so-called democracy dollars would be $138 billion.
Right, yeah, so, apparently for forgetting about the national debt and all these other many problems we have, and are going to devote an insane amount of money for the indefinite future to a cause that I don't think is actually going to do anything. Typical government program, I suppose.
Well, yeah, okay, so in that aspect, this is very, very normal, but it is abnormal for anyone, Democrat, Republican, any person who has a brain that works, to propose that the government give people money to do something that is a constitutional right, such as voting.
Right. Well, I think this is part of the feeling that it's long been proposed that campaigns should be funded entirely by public funds. There shouldn't be any private money at all in it, and that has the Supreme Court's rightly said, well, you can't do that. You can have a public funding scheme, but people have to have a choice whether or not to join it. And so, but I think this is the attempt to continue to try to get around that limitation.
Okay, so let's look at fun fact number 2. Taxpayers pay for candidates they don't support, which that circles us right back around to what we were talking about with the union stuff.
Right, and it's kind of worse than the other campaign public funding programs out there, because in this situation, other private people are deciding where that money goes. It's not like a viewpoint neutral and program where everybody gets allotted the same amount of public funds. So it essentially means that the more popular, the majoritarian candidates are the ones that are going to get the most money. Going back to what we're talking about, that we're not a democracy. There's a reason we put limits on majoritarian power, but this just increases that power. So the more popular the candidate, the more public funding they're going to receive.
Okay, so then the Supreme Court, your fun fact number 3 is that the Supreme Court found forced donation is unconstitutional, and that was in Janus versus AFSCME, which is the American Federation of something or other employees. Some union, some huge union. So Janus v. AFSCME is where this whole idea has been completely obliterated, yet you have Gillibrand, who is supposed to be this super smart senator, proposing this anyway.
Yes. Well, they, of course, we know that the left hates the Janus decision and will continue to pretend it doesn't exist. So it's not a huge surprise that she isn't thinking about that. There's been a lot of talk of trying to limit Janus to just the union context, which it isn't. I mean, the principle is that you can't force somebody to pay for somebody else's speech. That's a pretty broad principle. It has already been applied in a wide variety of contexts to things like commercial advertisements, bar associations. So this isn't limited to the union context, and it applies. I think it should apply with even greater urgency to something like a campaign for federal office, which is some of the most important First Amendment issues we have.
So the last fun fact is that this has already been tried in Seattle, Washington. So Seattle is a liberal bastion. Like, they control everything up there. And whenever things go wrong, they try to make it seem as if it's Donald Trump's fault. When I don't even think Donald Trump spends a lot of time in Seattle. When he was a civilian and, before he was ever president, he never was like a big Northwestern person where he was in Seattle all the time. But beyond that, the problems that they have in Seattle, which are many, have nothing to do with Republicans or, conservative thinking or anything like that. And this particular idea, failing in a liberal bastion, means it can't work anywhere, because if liberals are willing to do something and they try it and it still doesn't work, then it won't work amongst us, Bible and gun-toting rubes out here in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Yeah, so the Seattle program had sort of its first test run in 2017, the 2017 election. It was passed just before that time, and everybody in Seattle got 4 $25 vouchers. So it's basically just a smaller version of Joe Graham's proposal. And it was less than 4% of people ever returned those vouchers. So it really, nobody cared about it. And the people who did return them tended to be wealthy and white and older. In other words, the kinds of people whose influence the city is trying to reduce. So it didn't do anything actually to accomplish what they wanted to. In the meantime, the Seattle election went totally as expected. It didn't change anything about the election outcome.
So if a smaller amount, these little checks, little amounts, and it didn't work. And so what we're looking at is you started out with a statement that I think is probably the crux of this, which is if Americans had a choice between, hey, I'm going to give you $600 to spend on an election campaign, or, don't take it. A lot of Americans would just say, I don't feel like spending any money on an election campaign. They wouldn't take it. And then other Americans would probably say, yeah, I know it's supposed to be for an election campaign, but I'm actually going to buy a sofa with it, or, I'm going to make a car payment with it or whatever. And so it would end up that then people would be getting in trouble for misappropriating the money, or they just wouldn't take it at all. And very few people, like rabidly political people like myself, maybe yourself, we would actually take it and spend it on campaigns, but it would really only benefit that hardcore, huge contingent of the left, hardcore sliver of the right. Everybody else in the middle would be like, I don't even know what they're doing here. Just raise my taxes for nothing.
Right. I mean, it's kind of a classic preaching to the choir thing, because only people are going to use that money as people who are already engaged and already influenced in politics. The program was also very expensive to administer. So the administrative costs exceeded the actual money that went to campaigns. So it was an expensive failure that violates the Constitution, which I think that's actually a common story for government programs. But in this case, it's kind of bizarre to see it touted as a success.
So what do you propose? I mean, obviously, it's unconstitutional, so I'm not sure why she's hanging on to it. But what is the antidote to this? Obviously, us having this conversation, informing everybody of what is really the truth here. But how to battle this in the kind of mainstream arena where this is being given serious consideration by talking heads on the left?
I think the main thing that we need to emphasize, I think, is that communication, people of small means have more power to communicate than any other time in history. So it's kind of this, we shouldn't have this myopic focus on money. We should instead look at how are people able to get their voices heard. And there are so many ways to do that now that in a relatively cheap way that just haven't existed in the past. So from social media to all kinds of other examples. For example, David Hogg has 1 million Twitter followers. He has a huge voice, but it's not because he's wealthy. It's because he's made an impression that has lasted. So I think we live in a different kind of era now, in a good way, that there's a lot more power to get your voice heard. And that, I think, is the important message to focus on, not that wealthy donors are corrupting our republic. I was about to say democracy.
Good catch.
And usually, that corruption charge is leveled at policies that people just don't like. That's what it really is, more often than an actual finding that there was, some kind of under the table bribe or something like that. Not to say that doesn't occur, but the response is not to punish everybody else and restrict everyone's speech rights just because there might be a corrupt few.
Well, perfectly summed up. Ethan Blevins, attorney at the Pacific Legal Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. Talk to you again soon. Have a great week.
Thanks.
All right, we'll be back with more right after this.
Equipped with Chris Brooks.
This program is an apologetic endeavor. What I want to do is really train you in the art and science of defending and commending your Christian faith to people who maybe they've been hurt by the church, maybe they don't believe like you believe, and you're saying to yourself, how do I have an effective conversation with them? Well, we're looking for an evangelistic edge, if you will, that will allow us to more effectively, more contextualize the gospel so that we can reach men and women for Christ. Quite often, the on-ramp, if you will, is looking at culture and taking advantage of the conversations that folks are already having and saying, how can I leverage this to get people to talk about Jesus? This show becomes kind of massively significant to you if your desire is to reach people for Christ.
Get equipped with Chris Brooks.
Join me Monday through Friday at noon Central Time on Urban Family Talk.
Stand by. The BSAC radio show spotlights Christian rap artists.
Never try to put me on the pedestal. The Lord is working on me. I'm getting better still.
Hear in-depth interviews and news about upcoming releases.
What's your motivation? Jesus, he's our motivation.
BSAC is the Biblically Sound Artist Coalition. Don't miss the BSAC radio show. Saturdays from 10 a.m. to noon Central on Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do. In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Fox on Justice. Walter Huang was an engineer at Apple, a techie, and so it's not surprising that the 38-year-old Huang would volunteer to beta test a Tesla car equipped with its new autopilot driver assist system. But one March morning in 2018, Huang's Tesla slammed into a barrier on Highway 101 in Mountain View, California, and Huang was killed. His family is filing a wrongful death suit against Tesla.
What Tesla did was release an autopilot system claiming it does the driving for you, but it really didn't.
The family's lawyers say Tesla should not be testing its autopilot software on live drivers in real-world road conditions.
The everyday consumer isn't supposed to figure out what Tesla is supposed to figure out by their engineering testing.
Tesla has admitted that its autopilot was engaged at the time of the crash, but blamed Huang, saying he knew the system wasn't perfect and must not have been paying attention when the crash occurred. With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
But anyway, we have to make sure, this will sound political, but we have to make sure that the Constitution wins the next presidential election. We can't be worrying about, well, how long is this going to take or that. It'll take as long as it does. And we will press the case so that in the court of public opinion, people will know what is right. But we cannot accept a second term if we are going to be faithful to our democracy and to the Constitution of the United States. And that is just a fact. So we have to operate on many fronts. We have to operate in the Congress, in the courts, and in the court of public opinion. And we must win the next election.
Wow. So that was Nancy Pelosi, and she wants to make the president a one-term president. What else do we expect her to say, right? What do we expect her to say? She's not going to say, oh, I hope he has 2 terms. She's not going to say, hopefully, there's more Trump. She's going to say that. I don't, part of the reason why I played the clip is because I think it's important to just highlight that that's what she's saying. And when Republicans said the same thing about Barack Obama, it was, well, they're racist. They just hate America. They hate black people. No, they just didn't like the policies of the president at the time. So one of the things that is super important for us to do is to Just acknowledge that this is the way the two-party system works. Republicans don't want Democrats to have 2 terms. Democrats don't want Republicans to have 2 terms. Once you get past that, we can stop all this crazy, nonsensical rhetoric and just admit that it's a political fight to the death and that best man wants to win. And the Republicans are fighting it like a gentleman's game with a little, hand slap across the face of the leather gloves, while the Democrats are down slinging mud. They're launching grenade-launched missiles and grenades and whatever. They're doing warfare, hand-to-hand combat. They're in the civilian zones bombing stuff. They want to win, even if it's by hook or by crook. That's what we have to be aware of, and that's the arena we're operating in. It doesn't mean to get dishonest on our part, but that is the game. That's what's happening here. So call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So here's Representative Jim Jordan, and he has an interesting take on the Democrats' behavior towards AG Barr. I thought this was pretty fascinating because I've been saying this myself. So here he is. It's number 4.
These guys are bound and determined to go after the Attorney General, to go after President Trump, and not going to focus on what we need to do to help the country. So I think they're nervous about Bill Barr because remember what he said 3 weeks ago in front of the Senate Finance Committee. He made 4 important points. First of all, he said spying did in fact take place. Second, he said there is a basis for his concern that the spying wasn't properly predicated. Third, he said there was a failure of leadership at the upper echelon of the FBI. We know that's for sure. Comey, McCabe, Baker, Strzok, Page. We know there was a failure of leadership there. And then fourth, he used 2 terms that I've never really heard before, and my guess is most Americans haven't. He used the term unauthorized surveillance, and he used the term political surveillance. So the Democrats are scared. And frankly, I think when we're talking about obstruction of justice, the real obstruction of justice is what Democrats are trying to do to the Attorney General. They're trying to stop him by all these things, this contempt and not having him come testify. They're trying to stop him from getting the answers that we just talked about.
Yeah. So they don't want the answers because if they did, they could just change the law and then it wouldn't be illegal for the unredacted report to be released. The reason they're not doing that is because one day they'll be in the presidency again, and they know they have no guarantee that they won't have someone there who has done something that angers whoever's in power at the time. And if the investigation turns the way it did with the Clintons, that's the reason why the law exists, that the unredacted report of a special prosecutor cannot be released. And one of the things that I think is obvious is they didn't like the way it turned out for Bill Clinton. They didn't like the way it turned out for those witnesses who were interviewed during that process. And so consequently, they changed the law. So no more. I don't care who they're investigating. If it's the president of the United States and it's a special prosecutor, special, they like Mueller, the unredacted report cannot be released. And the only way to change that is to have Congress legislate it. So this is an exercise in futility. The only reason it is happening is because they want it to happen. They want the unredacted Mueller report not to be available. If they wanted it to be completely unredacted, so the whole Mueller report, names, dates, addresses, everything, if they wanted that out there, they could simply vote to make it happen because they're the legislative branch. Man, is that crazy that we have to even go through all of that. But that's the truth. That is the truth. That's what's happening right now. Let's go to the phones. Ernest in Michigan. Hey, thanks for calling the show.
Hey, thank you, Stacey. I'd just like to make this quick. God bless you for your voice. First of all, I'd like to make the comment about the woman who claims that life is not a life. God knew Jeremiah before he was placed in his mother's womb. Second of all, you're right about the mudslinging. When Barack won his second term, and I think he allowed the states to decide upon same-sex marriage, he was evolving. And then you had the audacity to light up the White House in the LBG colors, making a mockery of God. Let me just say this. For all the women and all the men who have caused women to have abortion because they were cowards, God forgives the shedding of innocent blood if you repent. Mm-hmm. But for the unrepentant, there is the second death, which is the lake of fire. And I hope everybody is listening to this. If you have had an abortion, repent. God forgives the shedding of innocent blood. It's not the unpardonable sin. The unpardonable sin is the blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. I just, you're so on. I thank God for your voice. You are a true soldier. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you, Ernest. I appreciate that. And thank you for clarifying that, because it can never be said too many times, because the nature of radio is that you may be here for 7 minutes, you may be here for 22 minutes, you may be here for the whole show, plus, you're listening all day to AFR, you're dipping in and out. You may be first-time listener, fantastic, welcome, we appreciate you. But in all things, we need to make sure that no one ever listens to the program, whether it's here or anywhere else. If you're tuned in to Christian radio, you need to be aware that, like Ernest said, there is forgiveness for partaking in the sin of abortion. If you were the husband or the boyfriend, or if it was your daughter and you were like, okay, go ahead and do it, we'll pay for it. Whatever your part was in it, you can repent and ask for forgiveness and be forgiven. But if you want to be on the other side, like this lady, the clip he's speaking of is in the first segment. We played a clip from a CNN contributor whose name I refuse to say. It says, when a woman gets pregnant, that is not a human being. Now, surely, what we hope is that she's just deceived and blinded by the ideology she's chosen, that it's not a true, she knows in her heart of hearts that it's a baby, and she's just denying that just so she can, score political points. But whatever the case may be, the sin is there, and it can be forgiven. Whether she's post-abortive herself, which I would, I'd bet dollars to donuts she is, not because I want her to be, but because that is the truth. The most rabid supporters of abortion are women who've had abortions themselves. And the most eloquent on abortion are often, speaking out against it for the pro-life side, are often women who've had abortion. So, this is a battle that's being waged, not just where we can see it. It's the battle in the heavenlies over the issue of whether or not we'll sacrifice human lives on the altar of sexual immorality. And so what Ernest said is so true. So you just don't want to be unrepentant when you make that trip, that last final trip. And it's a quick trip. I love the way people try to act like, well, they died 2 days ago, and so I'm still praying for their soul. They've already gotten. Look, this is, God's not mocked. He's not sitting up trying to schedule trains to get people from here to the afterlife. He's God. It's an instant journey. You're getting there, and you're meeting him face to face. And at that point, she will not be arguing and wagging her finger. She will not be saying, that's just a woman's appendage. She may say whatever she wants in her heart, and she can deny it and shake her fist until the very end, and maybe she will. I pray she won't. But you can be forgiven for the sin of abortion. You can be forgiven for just ask for forgiveness and receive it and turn away from the sin and move on. That's the message right there. If you don't get anything else out of today. And I think Ethan Blevins was a fantastic guest, and I think the show's been pretty good so far. But take that with you. That if you're going to take anything, take that with you. Let's go to Lee in Texas. Hey, Lee, thanks for calling the show today. Oh, I can't hear Lee. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Lee, welcome to the show. Hey, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. This is the first time I've listened to the show, and I don't even know what your name is.
Oh, I'm Stacy Washington. This is the Stacy on the Right Show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
My pleasure, Stacy. I'm Lee. I live in Del Rio, Texas.
Ah, nice to meet you.
My home is a mile from Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Born and raised here. I was in the ranching business. I had ranches on the Rio Grande River. And of course, when I tell you this, if people are listening from Del Rio, going to know who I am because I was an elected official here. And I've heard just a little bit about what you're talking about. My comment about Attorney General Barr is all this that's going on is to protect Obama and Hillary Clinton from going to jail. I think it's all a smokescreen to divert everybody's attention to keep people trying to protect Trump rather than going after the bad people, and that's my opinion on that.
And you're dead on. You're correct. I agree with you.
And I think people got to be tough, and I think they are. The minute President Trump came down that escalator, I thought he was just going to be another Los Pro rich man with an ego. When he started talking about Mexico and my experiences with it, he changed I knew who I was going to vote for right then. I was appointed by President Bush to the EPA committee back in the early 90s. It was called the Border Public Plan. And so my ties go with I've been in politics for a long time here. Your thing about abortion, I think it's a woman's body, and if she chooses to do what it takes to make a baby, and she makes a baby, she has to be accountable for that child. And she don't get 2 bites at the apple.
Thank you.
and I pray for people who are contemplating that. I pray for children who have gone through that and survived, thank God. And I do believe that Jesus died on that cross and to save us, and that's what we do have salvation. But I don't think you can rely upon that.
I know.
Come out and say, I'm going to do an abortion, and Jesus is going to save me. I don't have to worry about it. I think you've got some repentance to do.
Yep, you're right. Thank you. Thank you so much for calling and for sharing about being close to the border there. And I have to say, I think a lot of people were in the same boat as you, where they saw the president and they're like, I'm not sure here. Obviously better than Hillary, but, expectations maybe not as high. But God has really used Donald Trump. And I know some people who are Democrats, they hear me say that and they're like, well, you just worship. I don't worship Donald Trump. You might as well get up off of that real quick, because that is not me. But what I do say is, just like God has used so many other broken vessels to accomplish his will, even when people think they're outside of God's will and they're like, I don't know what I should do, and I'm scared to pray, and so I'm gonna just like David was when he was out there ransacking the different these were like little barbarian towns that the Israelites had not vanquished when they came into the promised land. And so he was out just raiding these places, and he was doing it because he's a man of war, and also he was in exile, and also he was like, these are not my people, so I'm gonna subjugate them, and me and my band of marauders, we're gonna put them down. Even in doing that, he was accomplishing prophecy and doing God's will. So come on now, if he can, Trump can, anyone can. Ian in Texas. Hey Ian, thanks for calling the show today. Ian, thank you for calling the show.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I thank you for giving us the news, because I work the night shift and I don't honestly have the time to get it. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm also somewhat people consider a millennial, and I care very much about my government. So I thank you also. And I grew up with a teacher who very adamantly told us to go out and vote once we got the ability to. And I don't think very many teachers nowadays do this. I think that's a problem, because most people don't feel like they need to vote, and we really need to, especially in the upcoming election with all this conspiracy theories of the Democrats are using.
You're right. And I hope that people take seriously their citizen duty to vote, the privilege to vote, and that they will do it, especially young people and millennials, that they'll be informed as you are, and then go out and do the voting. It's important. Ian, thank you for listening to the show, and also for getting your news here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We appreciate you. You know what? I hear the music. God bless you from the heartland. You have One News Now news and information up next. I'm Stacey on the right.
AFA Action Alerts. When you subscribe, we'll notify you once or twice a week about a critical issue facing our country. AFA Action Alerts have been very successful in influencing legislation, as well as getting positive results from America's Fortune 500 companies. Subscribe to your AFA Action Alerts today. Go to afa.net and click on the Resources tab.
truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. President Trump claims executive privilege over the special counsel's report, escalating a subpoena fight with the House of Representatives. Jared Halpern has more from Capitol Hill.
The White House is asserting executive privilege over the redacted portions of the special counsel's report subpoenaed by the House Judiciary Committee as the panel moves closer to a contempt of Congress resolution against the Attorney General.
The Trump administration has taken obstruction of Congress to new heights.
Committee Chairman Democrat Gerald Nadler calls the use of privilege unprecedented. Top Committee Republican Doug Collins calls contempt unnecessary.
I ask that you recognize the craven and insincere politics that seem to be yielding no dividends for the American people.
Approval of a contempt citation by the committee sends the resolution to the full House.
Minnesota Senator and presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar has agreed to hold a town hall meeting on Fox News Channel. Jeff Manasso has a preview.
She's the second 2020 Democratic presidential candidate behind Bernie Sanders to agree to a Fox News town hall, and tonight, here in Milwaukee, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar turns to a different audience.
One of the problems right now in our politics is that people are in opposite corners of the boxing ring. And you want to have a leader in the White House that's willing to reach out and bring people in.
Unlike many of the 2020 Democratic hopefuls, Klobuchar has not embraced a progressive agenda like Medicare for All or free college, though she has signed off on the so-called Green New Deal. In Milwaukee, Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
General Motors is in talks to sell its shuttered plant in Youngstown, Ohio, to an electric truck maker. Workhorse Group wants to use the facility to build electric commercial pickup trucks, and the company is vying for a contract with the U.S. Postal Service. Speaking at a news conference today, Governor Mike DeWine said he's optimistic, but the deal is far from done.
A lot has to happen. UAW has to, obviously make a decision which way they want to go in regard to this. And for this really to work, it's going to take the contract with the United States Post Office. So we're certainly going to be urging the Post Office to grant that contract to Workhorse.
The UAW sued GM for closing the plant, saying the automaker violated its contact with the union. A student who helped subdue one of the Colorado school shooters has been identified as Brendan Biley, a member of the Marines' Delayed Entry Program. The Marine said today that Biley put his own safety at risk and showed courage and commitment in helping tackle a gunman in the STEM school in the South Denver suburbs. Biley was not injured. Authorities say 18-year-old Kendrick Castillo was killed after he too lunged at one of the shooters. An elementary school is deciding to drop a famous American song based on religious grounds.
Peter Brigg, the principal of Saboda Elementary School in Springfield, Pennsylvania, is deciding to stop leading his students in God Bless America after reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to start a school day. At least one parent wasn't happy about the God Bless America part, filing a complaint with the Freedom for Religion Foundation, which said students should not be coerced into affirming God's name every morning. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
The NFL has announced a major initiative that aims to use the game to create educational and professional opportunities for young people in the United Kingdom. Matt Napolitano reports.
The NFL Academy will offer student athletes from ages 16 to 18 the opportunity to combine education with life skills and intensive training in the sport under full-time professional coaches. Based at Barnett and Southgate College, the Academy will also provide potential opportunity for those students to play NCAA football in the U.S. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And Walmart is raising the minimum age to buy tobacco products and e-cigarettes at all U.S. stores to 21. The move comes amid growing pressure from regulators to cut tobacco use among minors. Walmart says it will also stop selling fruit and dessert-flavored e-cigarettes, which critics say can hook teenagers on vaping. The new rules will take effect in July.
Fellow Americans and all of our friends, join me nightly right here on Urban Family Talk. The C.L. Bryant Show, 7 p.m. Central, as we build the bridge to conversation throughout our great nation, the greatest nation on the face of the planet, the greatest success story the world has ever known. That'll be America, 7 p.m. on Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible,
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
What magic wand do you have?
A really strong job report to start the year, finishing really after a very strong year last year, 2.6 million jobs created last year, and here, the first month of this year, 304,000 net new jobs. That's more the economists had expected.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. You know what? Yeah, this is just a continuation of what we've seen so far, which is the refusal to accept the results of the 2016 election. Even after really manipulating Americans and using the worst kinds of tactics in 2018 and winning back the House of Representatives, that's still not good enough. That's not good enough. Instead of them saying, well, we did our best. What we have to do now is we have to say, look, we have an opportunity to fix this border situation. And as much as we don't like Donald Trump, American lives are at stake. But that doesn't even matter. Not only do unborn babies not matter, the lives of black people, they don't matter. Yeah, I said it. Who's going to do something about it? I mean, right now, Facebook won't allow me to share the live stream from the show page over to my personal page. But, other than this little bit of censorship, who's going to do something about me telling the truth about the Democrats? Nobody. Thanks. I'm not worried about it. So that brings me to Newt Gingrich, who, and this hour, obviously, I need to preview it, right? Gary Goldman from Boston, Massachusetts. He's a syndicated talk show host, and he's going to join us this afternoon. He has some fantastic rapid fire commentary. We love having him on the show. He'll join us in a bit. But yeah, Newt Gingrich is saying that the savagery of the left is unprecedented, and that Trump's numbers will continue to go up. Now, I'm not one of those people. I don't like counting the chickens before they're hatched, or counting the, I don't like that one. Whatever that nice Southern colloquialism is that I used to know perfectly because my grandma used to say it. I don't like doing that. I do think there's a strong chance that the president could win re-election, but I also think that Google and Alphabet and Facebook are all going to work really hard to make sure it doesn't happen. They're going to do their very best to make sure that, Donald Trump doesn't have his ads showing to suburban women, that people in certain parts of the country don't think he's running for president. They're going to do whatever they can do. Luckily or fortunately or, in the state of blessing, whatever your favorite term is for that, God is in control. And us praying folk need to make sure we're lifting up the name of the Lord and praying for his will to be done here on earth, and making sure that we don't take anything for granted. Pray about it. Pray about it. You can literally change the atmosphere in your workplace, in your home. You pray. And if you really want to supercharge what you're doing, follow what God's word says. He says, where two or more are gathered in my name, I'm in the midst. He wants us to join together and pray over issues so he can move, so we can say, you know what? This was the situation. And then we prayed, and now this is the situation. He gets the glory. We get the answered prayer. It's just a win-win, win-win-win-win-win. So anyway, Newt Gingrich was saying that the savagery is unprecedented. It's number one.
I think persistent effort. I think the president, remember, he's just coming out from under
92% negative press coverage, a 2-year investigation that turned out to be totally phony. I don't know of any president in our lifetime who's carried as many negative burdens from the political class as President Trump has. And I think that's a very important thing to remember. The savagery and the hostility of the left has been unlike anything I've seen. And I would say, as Alan Guelzo, the great historian at Gettysburg College, said, you have to go back to Lincoln and the savagery of the slave-owning newspapers to see the kind of intensity we saw against Trump. I think as we get beyond that, his numbers are going to keep going up. As he continues to do a good job, his numbers are going to keep going up. And as people realize, you may or may not like his style, but you sure have to like his results.
Well. And guess what? I actually do like the president's style. Can we just talk for a split second about back in the day? So it's no secret. We watched The Apprentice back in the day when our kids were teeny tiny, and we were just like, you know what? We need something to watch in the evenings that's funny. And watching him fire somebody every night was so much fun. It really was. It was like once a week we got to sit down and he would fire somebody, sometimes 2 people. It was epic. And so I remember the very first episode of the, celebrity, or not celebrity, but the regular Apprentice, before the Celebrity Apprentice. And he talked about how, he was coming out of a really interesting time, kind of a comeback story for him of sorts, because he'd had to reorganize a number of his businesses through bankruptcy and a couple of the projects that he'd worked on. He'd had a successful run of projects in New York. And then he had a couple that were they were duds and they didn't work. And so he came out of that and he purchased some other businesses and launched some other, things. And really, to me, honestly, this is for the naysayers. PSA for the naysayers. It is so irrelevant to me that he had Trump steaks, and it's, so Trump steaks are now exclusively sold at Trump properties, but it used to be that they were marketed to everyone. It is so irrelevant to me that he had the ties or whatever, or that Ivanka sold, she had the clothing, and now, that's no more. What is relevant to me is that they started those businesses. So I would rather sit with a person who started 50 businesses and 20 of them survived and were successful than sit with someone who works at a minimum wage job somewhere. And you know what? God bless you. You probably have great things to say. I just don't have time to listen to them. Okay? And I hope that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. But if it does, there's a remedy for that. And that is for you to address your feelings, because I'm not going to. I would rather listen to someone who has literally started things from scratch, created things from their own ingenuity. They say, you know what? I'm going to start something here. I'm going to give this a try. There is beauty and respect for people who work for other people. That is fantastic. I work for someone, so that, there's respect there. I respect that. But I just think it's interesting that the people who spend the most time criticizing Donald Trump for his failures never mention his successes. And they're the same way about anybody who owns a business. They hate the owners of Walmart. They hate the owners of any business you can think of, Barnes and Nobles, any company. They're like, I hate it. Those big corporations, they just push over the little guy. Really? They push him over while they're employing him? If you talk to the people who work for these companies, yeah, some of them will complain. But a lot of people they're doing it. They're killing it at those jobs. They're grateful for those jobs. They're grateful for their health insurance. Or if they don't have health insurance, if they're in the, part-time working situation, they're grateful for the opportunity to earn their way into something full-time that is better. And that's the only attitude you can have. And so there's certain people would never, ever sit down with a business owner and try to learn from them. I would not only sit down with that person, I would be interested in hearing from them and learning from them, because they have things that they can teach you. And if you don't want to know it, it's like, that's cool. But you also shouldn't be so critical if you're not interested in learning how, because it takes failure to succeed. That if you've ever tried anything, it's never that you just start off small and start succeeding, or you start off huge and start succeeding and you never ever fail. That's impossible. If someone tells you they've never failed, they're lying to you. So if failure is a part of the process, then what is such the big deal about Donald Trump reorganizing his businesses through Chapter 11, which is what businesses do when they run out of cash and inventory and they still have people to pay? that is what they do. I would have much more respect for people who are critical of his failures if they would also acknowledge the successes. And it's not just Donald Trump that I feel that way about. I see people apply this same logic to tons of you see a news story about someone and they failed and everybody just piles on. But they weren't anywhere to be found when that person was succeeding and hiring people and helping to fuel the economy. And it's like that in almost every arena. You see somebody fall down on the job, they're struggling, and we can all be critical. I'm right over here and I'm petty party of one, president of the petty party. It's me, guilty as charged. But what is it that we're doing when we're piling on when people have failed, but we never acknowledge their successes? We weren't there, not even for a pat on the back or a, hey, how you doing? Or a golf clap when they were actually killing it. And that's my problem with the liberals. If they would say, you know what, this economy is booming. It's like nothing we've seen before, in recent memory. This is amazing. Lowest unemployment rate. If they would acknowledge that stuff, then I could see them being, critical about the low points in Donald Trump's past. But since he can't get any love at all, not an iota of positive thinking on anything, then I don't have time for it. And I came around to this learning about marriage. You know what's awful? You know why men have so many jokes out there about nagging wives? The nagging wife is not so much a problem because she's trying to get her husband to do something. It's that she doesn't know how to motivate her husband through positive enforcement. She doesn't know how to encourage her husband to give him what he needs so that he can do the things that she needs him to do. She only knows how to grate on his nerves with a voice that would kill 1,000 birds and just basically scrape the skin off of him with her voice, asking and nagging and reminding and doing it wrong. When it's done right, there really isn't any reminding at all. And again, not raining down on high, been there, done that, had the voice and the t-shirt on the other side. So much easier over here. Thank God. Okay. So it is in learning that I realized it is just, it wears people down. It drives people crazy when critical types can only notice the bad and never, ever, ever say anything encouraging or good. And so if we have anything to learn from what we're seeing right now on the political arena, it's that we don't want to be those people. We don't want to be the ones constantly pointing out, well, you failed at that. You were no good at that. Sitting up someplace, haven't tried anything, haven't failed at anything because we haven't done anything. That's not who we want to be. It's not what we want to project. It is not beneficial. It doesn't help. It's not getting us anywhere. So now I want to pivot over to this. The FBI, the Obama administration, using the FBI to basically spy on the Trump campaign. Now, y'all know I don't like DNI Clapper. Yeah, there's no need of me even trying to paper that over or make it pretty. It is what it is. The man is a liar. And so I was watching this audio clip of him where he's being interviewed about what the Obama administration used the FBI to do against the Trump campaign. Now, for people who work in the intelligence community, spying is a negative kind of term for what they call surveillance, evidence gathering, information gathering, etc. It's negative because it's been used in so many movies and books and everything. A spy is someone who's gathering information, and they're on the negative, right? They're the enemy. And our intelligence community does not consider themselves to be the enemy, obviously, because they work on behalf of the American people and they're paid by the taxpayers. They're government employees. We don't have time to listen to that, guys. We're going to have to listen to it. My producer's like, no time. Get over yourself, girl. You talked that one out. Okay, what we'll do is we'll listen to that when we get back in the third segment, not the next segment, because next segment we're going to talk to Gary Goldman, and he's going to be amazing. So you're going to want to be here for that. Head over to urbanfamilytalk.com and check out the information on the conference. That's coming up. You don't want to miss it. urbanfamilytalk.com. Marriage and Family Conference, ministry-wide, super speakers. You're going to want to be a part of that. Check it out. Be right back.
On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, we took the spices that we'd prepared and we went into the tomb. We found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When we went in, we didn't find the body of our Lord Jesus. Who took him? Where is he? Who took him?
Why do you look for the living among the dead?
Where's Jesus?
He's not here. He has risen.
Jesus was alive. He's alive.
Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, mocked, beaten, and then crucified on a cross for sinners like you and me. The Son of God was buried, and after 3 days, he rose from that grave. Urban Family Talk encourages you to rejoice in the glorious reality that our God is a living God.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, for decades, Congress has been willing to give its legislative powers to the executive branch in general and the president in particular. Senator Mike Lee writes about why this has happened and what Congress can do to stop this dangerous trend. He reminds us that President Obama more than 20 times said he didn't have the authority to rewrite immigration laws and then did so in 2012 during the height of the re-election campaign. He speculates that a President Kamala Harris could use the broad powers of the National Emergencies Act to declare a national emergency over climate change and justify all sorts of unconstitutional actions. This is not what the framers intended. The very first clause of the very first section of the first article of the Constitution declares all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States. They did this because this branch of government would be most accountable to the people. Today, so much power is in the hands of government bureaucrats as well as in the hands of presidents due to the actions of previous presidents and various judicial rulings. Congress also has been too willing to give their constitutional power to the president and the executive branch. Senator Lee has an agenda of structural reforms to strengthen Congress by restoring legislative powers in a number of key areas. In the past, trying to enact legislation like this would be difficult, if not impossible. But there may be a window given that Democrats and even never-Trumpers in the Republican Party might be willing to pass some needed legislation. Of course, this is an election year when traditionally Congress does very little. If nothing happens, that would be unfortunate. Too much legislation is being written by unelected bureaucrats or by presidential executive orders. We need to return government back to its original foundation. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being here with us at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We are so excited to have our next guest join us. He is frequently on the program, although it's been a little teensy bit since we've spoken to him. Gary Goldman is a Boston, Massachusetts syndicated talk radio show host. So we're in the same biz. And he does a lot of commentary. He's really sharp, kind of up to the minute on everything. Gary, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You know, I enjoy our chats. So let's get this out of the way because it's a subject, and I've been yawning about it. Every time I see it online, I yawn. But we should cover it. Okay, Gary? So apparently the president, over the course of some years, 10, 13 years, whatever, what does it matter? He lost about $1 billion that he wrote off on his taxes, as businesses are wont to do. I understand that Amazon writes off 11 or 50 or 11 billion on theirs every year, so they don't have to pay any tax at all. But it's super important because it's Donald Trump, and everyone's supposed to hate him.
Isn't it just incredible? Because, first of all, if we look at the time period, recession, he didn't do anything fraudulent. He took advantage of tax laws that all of us would take advantage of. And just because, as you said, it's Donald Trump, they want to go after him. And, you know, the reality of this is if you looked at tax return versus a financial statement, you'd get a totally different picture. So they're just looking at the fact that he lost money. He isn't the businessman that he said he is. He's quote unquote a fraud. It's not the case. I mean, he did what he had to do at that particular time on his taxes, and the bottom line is there were some losses. We could go through financial statements and tax returns for many companies, like you just said, Amazon, and we'd find the same thing. And what I say to you, Stacey, those on the left, the Schumers, the Pelosi's, all of them that have businesses, family businesses or benches with their husbands, let us see your tax return.
Oh, yeah.
Put your tax return out there and let us see what you did, because I'm pretty sure we'd see the same thing from them.
Well, especially the Pelosi's, because they have an enormous empire of vast, real estate holdings, a restaurant, a winery, and they're very wealthy. So they clearly have some of those $1,600 an hour tax attorneys working for them to make sure that the tax code is to benefit them, just like Donald Trump did. He only used the laws that were available to him at the time.
Right.
This is a huge nothing burger, am I right?
It's terrific how this is what we're focused on. There are so many problems and issues on a day-to-day basis, and this is what we're focused on, and it's just too bad. I mean, from my perspective, I think of the bigger picture, the bigger problem with this picture is who released this information, how did they get this information. That should be more concerning to every one of us as Americans. If someone from the IRS is leaking this information to somebody, wow, I'm all for it. Let's get rid of the IRS, go to a standard, tax, and everyone pays the same percentage, and that's the end of this. But the IRS, more and more we're finding out how dangerous they are, and some of the things they do, the unscrupulous things they do, should concern every American. Forget about your political affiliation, because it can happen to either side at any point in time.
So that is the next part that I wanted to get to, and you perfectly segued into it, Gary. We're talking about some IRS employee, I guess, who realized that the Trumps are in the right and not being forced to share the taxes. So they decided they would share them for them. And they got 10 years worth and they shared them. Surely there's a way we can find out who did that, or am I wrong?
There has to be a way we can find out who did that. Look, they're obviously, this president, when you think about what he's accomplished with the baggage that he's holding on a daily basis, some within his administration, some that's just part of the government that he has to deal with, it's truly amazing. But we need to find out who is involved in releasing this information. I mean, there's all sorts of theories out there, and there was a part of me that said, because Hillary Clinton made some comments the other day that, about China in regard to the tariffs. If you really, Clinton mocks China. If you listen, why don't you get Trump's tax returns? And all of a sudden, his tax returns are out there. And there's a part of me that thinks she may have had something to do with this. She may have had these tax returns as part of the 2016 election, never used them because she was so out of touch with reality and thought she was winning that election. But, I mean, we could look at either way, someone gave her that information. We have to find out who this is, and we have to deal with it. And immediately. I mean, this, look, there's a lot of cleaning up that's going on in our government now, hopefully. The Justice Department and IRS, we've got to deal with these things. The longer we let them go, we're going to have more and more situations like this.
So, in your estimation, you feel that the announcement that she made about China getting his tax returns, and then now the tax returns being released, that's connected?
I'm not one of these conspiracy people.
Oh, yeah.
Don't go down that road.
Right.
But there's a part of me that when I first read this, maybe a week or so ago about her, and then it came out, I said, wait a second. When she was saying it, I said, boy, that's kind of a funny comment for her to be making. And then next thing we know, his tax returns are out. Michael Cohen goes to jail yesterday. Does he have something to? All of a sudden, he's going to jail, and here comes the president's part of his tax return. But
he said there was more to learn. You remember he made some kind of statement like there's more dirt to uncover, something like that, and then now.
Right, exactly. So either way, somebody is feeding these individuals that information. I would hope that they don't have that direct access to get it out of the IRS, and I don't think they do. But somebody's feeding somebody this type of information. Look, there's a lot of people, like I don't want to be repetitive, in this administration, in the government, that do not like Donald Trump, and they're undermining him every day, and this is just part of it. And this whole bit about his tax returns, we don't need. As long as the president hasn't done anything fraudulent, I'm okay with what he does. I don't really want to see his tax returns. I want him to continue to do the great things that he's doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, but now that now that we have all the dirt on Trump's and it's really minuscule, like if someone says, oh, don't come over, my house is filthy. And you're like, nope, I have to drop this off today. You ring the doorbell, they let you in, and they have maybe one little dust bunny in the corner. And you're like, this is what you consider filth? Oh my gosh. Thank you for letting me in so I can understand your level. You are like on another level of clean. Here's what I owed you. Like, here's your book back. And now you leave feeling horrible about yourself because you've got 4 dust bunnies and you've at least got the dirt off one of your kids' shoes that you can see as soon as you open the door. And they had the one dust bunny. That's what this feels like to me. Like, I think if we've now seen 10 years of Donald Trump's tax returns and the biggest deal is that he lost $1 billion and he's still worth $5 billion. Again, how can I get some time with the president to just sit and talk business? And by talk, I mean me sit with my pen and my paper and listen to him talk business. He lost $1 billion he wrote off, and he's still worth $5 billion. I don't think people are looking at this right.
No, because they're not looking at it right because it's the same old, same old. The media, the mainstream media, constantly negative talk, social media. They focus in on the loss when, look at accounting, especially at that level, is very difficult to understand. Those, like you just said, those losses seem outrageous to all of us or to some people, but yet he still made X billion dollars, so there's something else going on. They're showing a small narrative to disrupt people's, what people think and make them think that he's a horrible businessman, that there's something corrupt about him, and that's just the whole narrative here. The narrative is to keep throwing as much as they can at Donald Trump through the next election cycle, hoping that they can steal their way into the White House. Look, the poll numbers are going the wrong way if that's the case. His poll numbers seem to be pulling upward all the time. I'm here in liberal Massachusetts, and there are more and more people that are getting tired of this push to the far left, this lack of governing for the people, and many of our people in Washington, our politicians in Washington, they're the culprits. They go after this president on an everyday basis. There are a lot of things here in Massachusetts that are not getting tended to. I think that's what people are getting tired of. That's why you're seeing his numbers go up. And I think the tax return thing, just like many other things, will dwindle around for a while, and then it will go away, and they'll be on to something else. I mean, they're still trying to get other tax returns of his, but that's not what we should be spending our time on.
Okay.
It's a no story. If you understand a little bit about business and accounting, as you eloquently put about him making $5 billion, it's a no story.
Yeah, so nothing burger. But Gary, here's the other thing, because I'm getting a little bit giddy over here. Remember some of the things, and I know it's a lot. There's no way you and I could sit here. We could have 6 hours and we couldn't recall it all. All of the things that the Democrats have said, the reason he doesn't want to show his tax returns is, and then ... and there's like 1,000 things. He's really not worth $5 billion. He really, he did business with Russians. He all these things, like he's a criminal. He cheated on his taxes. He never pays any in tax, which he actually released 2 years or something like that showed that he paid more in tax than a lot of rich folks. Like a lot of football players make a year, he paid more in tax. And then everybody shut up about the tax returns for a while because they were like, oh, that actually made him look like an OG because he pays like, $60 million a year in tax. And people were like, respect, look at him, he's awesome. So, am I ready to Snoopy dance over here? Because if that's all they found, that he lost $1 billion, that means he's not a criminal. He didn't do business with the Russians. There's nothing else there, but except that he lost some money.
Exactly. We know he did. He may have had business dealings with Russia or some part of Russia in regard to his international enterprise there, but he's done nothing wrong. He has not. Look at if he did something wrong, and if the IRS had something on Donald Trump, I used to say this in regard to the Mueller report. If they had something, they would have dealt with it by now. We know he's under audit. A lot of people are under audit. But if he did something fraudulent, it would have been exposed so long ago. That would have been old news. There's nothing here, as you said, nothing, Burger. There's nothing here. We want to move on to things that better the country, those on the left that want to move down, that continue to tear down the country. That's the unfortunate thing here.
Yeah, Gary, I'm a little stuck. Like sometimes, you see something online and you're like, I should purchase that dress, boots. I should purchase those. And then you close the window out and you don't think about it again. But other times you see the boots, they're on sale. You can't get them out of your mind. I can't get this out of my mind. Are you telling me all these months, it's been 2.5 years now, we've been sitting around and part of us, whether we like to admit it or not, I'm fine with admitting it, Gary. I've been worried that if he released the tax returns, there'd be something there that would be, that would be the thing that the Democrats latch onto, or that Mueller would latch onto it, and it would be his undoing. And sometimes, it's your tax attorneys, they're just trying to do the best for you, and it just looks bad. And other times it's an actual rule that you've broken, and there's so many. And so deep down I thought, well, I don't want him to get away with anything. I definitely want him to be squeaky clean. But what if there is something? And that's what I thought to myself. What if there really is something? And what you're saying is the New York Times has 10 years of his tax returns. They've looked at them. They've dug through them. They've combed them. They've had all their interns look at every single line, circle every little area that could be anything. And all they found was that he took losses, which is what businesses do. The end.
Right. So here's what I say to what you just laid out here. We look at it. I've been in this same thought process as you. I hope there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he does not want to let go of those tax returns for a number of reasons. One is just privacy, and he's sticking to his guns. Secondly, think about this, Stacey. If there was something there, the IRS, whether we see him or not, or the New York Times sees them, auditors and people within the IRS, no doubt in my mind, have gone through Donald Trump's tax returns from A to Z. Now, maybe that's why they're auditing him. That doesn't mean he did anything wrong. He may have did something with a deduction that's not, has to be adjusted, or things that have to be adjusted. That happens during audits. But I'm telling you, if something fraudulent went on, we would know about it by now. They would have been using that as, if you think we had leaks, we have leaks now. Prior to 2016 or the 2016 election, that stuff would have been out there. Because this has been, we're talking, many years back, not just current tax returns, we're talking many years back. That information would have been out there. I think
you're so right.
People are just speculating he's holding back because he did something wrong. I don't take it that way.
Well, so far, just because I've seen people saying he's the most vetted president we've ever had in the history of this country, this really proves it. Because if there's anybody who could, if there was anything to find, the New York Times would not hold back. And they seem like they're kind of equal opportunity, because isn't the New York Times the ones that said there really is a crisis at the border and we really do need to do something about it? So they seem like they're kind of like, you know what, whatever we can get, we're going to get it, and we're going to put it out there. We're going to put the news out there. If there was something, if there was an iota of anything, they would be on it. They would expand on it. They would investigate it. They would put it out on every page of their newspaper, and then the talking heads would pick it up and they would use it. So there's nothing, which again, I'm only pointing this out because we have a wide range of listening audience here, and, of course, Christian radio, but we also have people who listen that disagree with a lot of what goes on here. And I've never, ever wanted the president to get away with anything. So if he was guilty of anything and the Mueller investigation found it, I would want him to, be held accountable. I've said that from day one. But so far, the Mueller investigation, nothing burger. The look into his, the comments from before, the comments from the Access Hollywood videotape, I'm sorry, but that was a nothing burger. The extramarital affairs, which his wife already knew about, and they were old news. The payoffs of some of the women, also nothing burgers. And now here we are, and obviously immoral, but nothing burgers. Now the tax returns, which was their last hill to die on. Gary, nothing burgers. We got about 20 seconds left. Close us out.
There's nothing there. They will continue this witch hunt to find something on him. They're wasting their time. It's purely a distraction going into the 2020 election. Look, I'm with you. If Donald Trump did something wrong, illegal, he should be treated just like anybody else. And whether it's, a fine, whatever, it depends on the nature of if there was a crime. There's nothing here we did. If Mueller had something, it wouldn't have taken 2 years to come out. There's nothing to be said on his tax returns about Russian collusion. It is purely a witch hunt against a man that they all liked up until he became president and basically, quote-unquote, begged for him to donate to their causes and campaigns.
Perfect, Gary. Thank you so much for joining today. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've been all over the country helping disaster victims who lose everything.
It's truly a blessing. I really don't have the words to express.
And yet they see a glimmer of hope when a volunteer shows up.
Building the home, that's the second reason we're here. The number one reason is to share the gospel and give them hope.
It's everything that's right in America. I mean, it really represents the best that we have to offer.
That's one of the main reasons for doing it, is being able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and coming out and working with so many wonderful volunteers.
I just feel like it's important in this day and age to teach a child how to serve.
Please go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, and click on Get Involved, submit your email address, and the next time we go anywhere with a disaster, we'll invite you to come along as well.
I love coming in the job room because you can see these pieces of paper. They aren't just a piece of paper. Right. It's a family that's hurting, and it's a gospel opportunity.
You know, I just thank God, for this moment. I mean, I'll be back in my home, and I know it's going to be awesome.
Come love others with 8 Days of Hope.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Do you enjoy contemporary Christian music? I certainly do. The songs are lyrically encouraging and truly uplifting. But what of our old hymns? Increasingly, hymns are being drummed out of use for many well-intentioned reasons. I was reminded of the power of singing hymns a few years ago during Bible Study Fellowship. 450 women joined in song. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. Early in the morning, our song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty. God in three persons, blessed Trinity. By the third verse, many of us began to weep. In my heart, I knew that we had briefly glimpsed heaven. Later that day, I ordered a used hymnal to facilitate singing praise and worship songs at home. I will always enjoy the upbeat mainstream sound of contemporary Christian music, but the hymns will always tug at my heartstrings. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
It's The Candidates with Brett Baer.
I'm John Hickenlooper. I'm running for president because we're facing a crisis that threatens everything we stand for.
Chris Starwalt, Fox News digital politics editor. I had Jim Messina on the panel, Obama campaign guru, and he said John Hickenlooper is running for Colorado Senate. He just doesn't know it yet.
He just doesn't know it yet. And that's the Cory Gardner seat, which Democrats is probably at the very top, that in Arizona, at the very top of their list of red to blue opportunities.
Anna Palmer, senior Washington correspondent for Politico and co-author of the book, The Hill to Die On.
I think he's got a pretty good record to run on.
Josh Kraushaar, politics editor at National Journal.
Politically speaking, he's done very well in Colorado, winning 2 terms in a swing state.
There is a lane for moderates in the Democratic Party, but it may be just exactly the size of Joe Biden.
You can hear more of this series at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. I'm Brett Baer.
This is Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Using undercover agents is a standard and legitimate technique that is widely used in investigations. That technique has been used to thwart a lot of counterterrorism plots in this country. So I'm sure, there are protocols and standards for using an agent, and I'm sure that's the case here. No, it's never done lightly.
Was it spying?
Well, I guess it meets the dictionary definition of surveillance or spying. A term I don't particularly like. It's not a term of art used by intelligence people. It has a negative connotation of a rogue operation, out of control, not in compliance with the law, and that's not the case at all.
Well, so didn't he sound somber and serious? And he's the same guy who said that the president was a traitor, a treasonous traitor. And now he's like, well, it does meet the dictionary definition of spying. Like, he seems much chastened, doesn't he? That old Clapper. Wow. Interesting. Welcome back to the program, Stacey Washington. Find out more at Stacey on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. Also, find us on Facebook. And then, of course, our news site is onenewsnow.com. Check it out. Best content, best reporters, anywhere. You're going to find that stuff over there at onenewsnow.com. So, yeah, I can't really disagree with what he said there. I just wish that he'd been more circumspect in his comments before now. I hate seeing him now trying to sound kind of, academic and what, instead of before when he was on CNN just spouting off any old thing he could push out of his lips. And most of it was garbage. He just got away with it. It was just garbage all day, garbage all night. He was on there all the time. Like every time you turn on CNN. And mind you, I watched via the clips because we don't have cable. And every clip, it's Clapper says President Trump is a traitor. Clapper says President Trump committed treason. Clapper says that President Trump is a Russian puppet. I was just like, dude, get a life. You're so out of control right now. And now here he is. He's like, well, I mean, you can't really say that it's not spying. Okay, Clapper. Anyway, so did you guys hear that Cory Booker says he's going to raise taxes on everybody if he's the president? Now, admittedly, it's a very, very slim, slender, teensy-weensy, itty-bitty chance that he would ever be the president of the United States. But he is running. And he doesn't seem willing to kind of examine his own policies. He's just running on whatever Democrats are supposed to run on, which is hiking up taxes. Even though, so out of every 10 Democrats that I ever encounter and talk to, mind you, I know Democrats, like I have a lot of Democrats in my family, and none of them want their taxes raised. None of them. Now, I will occasionally meet a blowhard who will tell me, I'm fine with the progressive tax system because I make a lot of money and I'm fine with paying my fair share in taxes. I'm like, oh, good. Well, then you can pay all you want, but I don't want to pay any more than I'm paying right now because I think the government's wasteful. Well, the government being wasteful doesn't mean you shouldn't pay what you owe. I do. I do that. I'm saying I don't want to pay any more. I want to pay less than right now. I want my obligation to be lowered. Well, that's just not the way you're supposed to think. So the guy that I'm thinking of who told me that, and others like him, they have the same mindset as Cory Booker. Cory Booker thinks that paying higher taxes is a matter of being patriotic. Now, I have my pocket Constitution. I also have like an explainer on the Constitution that I have right here. In fact, let me grab it. It's called The Words We Live By, Your Annotated Guide to the Constitution. Now, this book is really good. I'm not going to lie. And it's got a lot of those info boxes, which are cool, and then illustrations. So, I'm not going to be, obviously, reading this to you on the air, but what I'm saying to you is, and this one's revised and updated to include the latest in constitutional law. What I'm saying to you is that nowhere in here or in the actual Constitution is there a place where it says taxation is patriotic. The founders didn't think that at all. That's why they waged war on Great Britain and broke free. Taxation. Yeah, so here he is. Just honestly, the words that are coming out of this man's mouth, how he could be running for the presidency, it is so beyond me and outside of the realm of reality. It's laughable. It's number 2.
I think that we live in a nation with far more patriotism than people are expressing. And what I mean by that is folks want the best for their country. And they know that if your family doesn't have a great public school for your kid, if your family does not have great access to health care, then we all are suffering as a result of that, and often creating greater costs.
So we're suffering and creating greater costs? Look, the fact is, if your kid's school district is failing, it's probably due in no small part to you having a low tax base in that area, which means property values are lower because crime is kind of high. So you're stuck in a negative kind of loop. And that negative loop means that kids end up in poverty, and poverty is one of those kind of indicators that you're not going to have a lot of really great outcomes. And so I was thinking about this today when I was looking at the gerrymander case. There's this case that's working its way through the appellate courts about gerrymandering. And it's really not important the state that it's in or any of that. It's that gerrymandering happens all over the country lawfully when, congressional districts are drawn and redrawn, et cetera, because people who have the same voting patterns like to be in a district together so that they can have representation that is their political view. And people who have other political views end up grouped in other areas, and they tend to also have similar socioeconomics. It's fascinating, isn't it? So you've got people, let's say they're Republicans, and they live in a certain area. They're moved there for the property values and the school system. Even if they don't have kids, they want to live in that school district so their house will have resale value. And they tend to vote similarly, hence them moving into that area. So the efforts by Democrats to take people from poverty-stricken areas and insert them into areas that are more affluent, it is, generally speaking, actually, it's a wonderful idea on like a napkin at a restaurant, just spitballing. Because then you think the poor people would pick up some of the habits of the people that they're living nearby. But that's not how human nature works. People who are poverty-stricken, many of them tend to vote, from inner cities specifically, they tend to vote for the policies that ensure they'll be poverty-stricken. So all you're doing is importing voters into an area where they're not going to have adequate representation. They're going to want to turn it into a place where they have someone representing them that believes the same things that they believe, which means they want to turn that successful area into an unsuccessful area. Now, just saying that, you already got people, they're already on their keyboards like that crazy cat gif, and they're typing as hard as they can because they're mad because I said that. But it's the truth. The reason why certain areas vote solidly Republican or other areas vote solidly Democrat, and not all solidly Democrat areas are poverty-stricken. There are plenty of suburbs in the city of St. Louis. There's suburban areas that are Democrat they're beautiful suburbs. They're gorgeous houses and everything else. And then there are areas that are heavily Republican, same thing. So it's not like you can't be successful and vote for Democrats. But notice that the Democrats never suggest to take the poverty-stricken individuals from the inner city and move them into Democratic areas. They suggest to move them into the areas where Republicans are to dilute the Republican vote and to hopefully flip those areas into being Democratic as well. So it's complex because what ends up happening is people discount the impact that we're talking about humans here, not game pieces or, cogs in a wheel or widgets, human beings. You don't know how they're going to behave. Some of the human beings will get up and move as soon as they see an influx of people coming in that don't vote the same way as they do. And that will be called racism, when in reality, it's people trying to protect their transactional voting patterns and their property values. So behavioral and cultural norms matter. They matter much more than skin color. And the research on that, Thomas Sowell. Read his books. He has over and over and over again proven that what people care about more than the skin color of their neighbors is if their neighbors have the same culture that they have, the same work ethic, the same desire for success, the same kind of family structure. And if that is present, people are much more likely to discount. I didn't know we had a caller. To discount what they're seeing from someone else on the other hand. So, okay. Thank you for calling into the show. I don't see your name here on the call screening software, but thank you for calling.
This is Renee.
Hi, Renee. Thanks for calling the show.
Yes. What I'm calling about is the reference that Nancy Pelosi made about taking this to the court of public opinion. And it really struck me. I had just read an AFA Journal article from last month about the Constitution and how much people know about it. And if I may, I'm going to read a couple of things in here. It says, according to the Freedom Forum Institute, May of 2018 shows that 36% of respondents could name one freedom, but only 3 could name 4 of the 5 freedoms. Only one respondent out of the 1,009 polled could name all 5 of them that were in the First Amendment. Okay, and And it says 40% of the participants could not name a single right guaranteed by the First Amendment.
Wow.
It also says another one, yes, and that another survey of 113 U.S. adults revealed that only 26% of the respondents could name the three branches of government, executive, judicial, and legislative, while 27% could name just one branch, and only 13 could name at least two. 33 could not name a single branch.
A single branch of government?
Public opinion. We're going to take this to the court of public opinion, and the public is this ignorant.
Renee, I'm stuck. Couldn't name one branch. There's only 3 branches. You gotta be able to name one. Oh, Renee, thank you so much for calling with that. That is so. In other words, Nancy wants to take it to the court of folks who don't know anything about the Constitution, and that is, I'm not trying to be insulting. And I have before, like, sometimes late night TV, they'll have someone on the street asking questions, and I've gotten them wrong before and thought, man, I got to buff up. So none of us are like constitutional scholars. Well, constitutional scholars are, but the rest of us are just, we're just making do. We're doing the best we can. But come on, there's only 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial. Co-equal, none above the other. Like, that's one that's kind of basic. So again, this is actually, full disclosure, because I don't want people to think I'm that special or that smart or, that I get it right that much. This book, The Words We Live By, Your Annotated Guide to the Constitution, is actually a book that our daughter had as a textbook in high school. And I'm currently so what you can't see, if you're watching on the live stream, if you're listening on the radio, God bless, thank you for your ears. If you're watching with the live streams, what you can't see, first of all, the background looks different because the desk has been moved and we've been reorganizing this whole room. And we have a triple bookcase in here that's chock full of books. So me and daughter, the youngest, have unloaded half of the center bookcase, and it's all the kids' textbooks from the different schools they've attended. And I found this book, and I'm like, this is one that I should have been reading along with whichever kid this was. I think it was our oldest daughter. And so I got it out, and I'm like, I'm going to use this for reference during the show because there's plenty of times where we talk about the Constitution, and I should have the actual source right here. And also, we have a ton of pocket constitutions. I'm going to have one of those here as well. But suffice it to say, can't talk smack if we don't know all the goodies ourselves. So it should be, I don't know if we need to play Trivial Pursuit for the Constitution or, if there are games out there. I know Hillsdale College has a bunch of classes that you can take online at home at your own pace about the Constitution. But we should know more than that. If we expect, as Nancy Pelosi says, to be the court of public opinion and be able to govern from that perspective, we should know what it is that we're talking about. So my hope is that we'll do that. It takes time. You have to just kind of say, I'm going to skip one TV show or skip one, whatever you like to do in the evening and spend 20 minutes reading the Constitution and just do that until you get done. There has to be a way to do it, right? All right. I hear the music. God bless, from the heartland of the United States of America, right out here in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. God bless you tonight. Have a fantastic evening. Until tomorrow, StacyOnTheRight.com.